Hello, it's Foreign News O'Clock on Allnews Nigeria. I am Okwemi Olugbemi. Here are the headlines for today. Joe Biden urges Congress to finish economic fight back. US-China trade hits record high amid tensions. Now the news in detail. United States President Joe Biden on Tuesday called on Republicans to help him to finish the job of rebuilding the economy and restoring faith in American democracy in his second State of the Union address as he made an unfettered call to action on police reform, gun control, and the climate crisis. Addressing a divided Congress for the first time, an optimistic Biden made the case that the nation was stronger and more stable than when he assumed office 2 years ago. Midway through the first term of his presidency, the president credited his policies with helping to wrench the country from the depths of the coronavirus pandemic, usher in record job growth, and strengthen a democracy threatened by anti-democratic forces at home and abroad. But to continue making progress, Biden argued he would need support from the very Republican House majority eager to unravel his agenda and undermine his political prospects as he prepares to seek a second term. Addressing the nation from his House rostrum, Biden trumpeted the legislative accomplishments from his first 2 years in office, including a sweeping health and climate package, an infrastructure law, and major new investment in the domestic semiconductor industry. He also pointed to signs of a brightening economic outlook, easing inflation and the country's unemployment rate, which hit a 53-year low of 3.4% last month. Biden further introduced a father who had lost his daughter to a fentanyl overdose in 2014. Vowing to confront the fentanyl crisis, Biden was met with shouting from Republicans who blame the president's border policies for worsening deadly drug trafficking. Acknowledging their response, it is that he was happy to have Republican assurances that those programs will be protected. Joe Biden made minimal reference in his world speech to the foreign policy imbroglio that has gripped the nation in recent days, a suspected Chinese surveillance balloon that crossed U.S. territory before the American military shot it down off the coast of South Carolina last weekend. The president said he was committed to working constructively with China, but cautioned, "Make no mistake, as we made clear last week, if China threatens our sovereignty, we will act to protect our country," and we did. Republicans have been demanding to know why Mr. Biden waited a week to act. The president's administration has said it wanted to avoid risks to civilians from falling debris. Joe Biden's speech was light on foreign policy in general, with Ukraine, the main topic of his 2022 State of the Union in the wake of Russia's invasion, getting a mention towards the end of the year's remarks. Joe Biden reiterated that the U.S. will stand with Kyiv as long as it takes. In other news, trade between the United States and China hit a record high last year, even as their diplomatic relations reached new lows. Imports and exports between the two countries totaled $619.6 billion in 2022, official figures have shown. Tensions rose between Washington and Beijing in recent days after a Chinese balloon traveled across the U.S. The world's two biggest economies have been locked in a bitter trade war since 2018, when the then President Donald Trump started imposing tariffs on China. The new figures show that U.S. imports from China increased to $536.8 billion last year, as American shoppers spent more on Chinese-made goods, including toys and mobile phones. In the same period, U.S. exports to China increased to $153.8 billion. While some of the increase in trade between the two countries is as a result of the rising costs of living, the figures also point to how reliant the U.S. and China still are on each other, even after years of trade conflict between them. In 2018, the Trump administration started to ramp up trade measures against Beijing. After decades of rising Chinese imports, Mr. Trump began imposing tariffs on a total of more than $300 billion worth of Chinese goods. China hit back by placing import levies on about $100 billion of American goods. Most of these measures remain in place more than 2 years after Joe Biden became president. This month, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken had been due to visit China in what was seen as a thawing of relations between the two countries. America's top diplomat was set to visit Beijing from 5th to 6th February to hold talks on a wide range of issues, including security, Taiwan, and COVID-19. However, the trip was abruptly postponed after the discovery of a suspected Chinese surveillance balloon that drifted across America.
As you know, President Biden and President Xi agreed during their meetings in Bali in November that I would travel to Beijing to follow up on their discussions. We've been working across the U.S. government to prepare for a substantive set of discussions on issues that matter to the American people and to people around the world. And we've been engaging for some time with our counterparts in Beijing to prepare for these meetings. Yesterday, the Department of Defense announced that we had detected and were tracking a high-altitude surveillance balloon that remains over the continental United States. We continue to track and monitor the balloon closely. We're confident this is a Chinese surveillance balloon. Once we detected the balloon, the U.S. government acted immediately to protect against the collection of sensitive information. We communicated with the PRC government directly through multiple channels about this issue. Members of my team consulted with our partners in other agencies and in Congress. We also engaged our close allies and partners to inform them of the presence of the surveillance balloon in our airspace. We concluded that conditions were not conducive for a constructive visit at this time.
Chinese officials have repeatedly said the airship is for civilian use and entered the United States due to force majeure. It was completely an accident, they say. In a State of the Union address on Tuesday, United States President Joe Biden made no direct mention of the Chinese balloon, but said that his administration will always protect its sovereignty. And that's it on today's news. To keep up with Allnews Nigeria, kindly follow us on all social media platforms displayed on the screen. Stay tuned on our channel for more updates. I am Allnews. Do have a lovely evening.